Hello, my name is Peter Nicholson. Today I will be presenting a case on Apple Pay. I will be discussing the Apple Pay's information technology behind it, its competitive environment, as well as the organizational implementation that was implemented in Apple Corporation. Apple was incorporated in California in 1977 by Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak. Apple started out as a company just selling personal computers, and today it's a multinational organization in many different sectors of technology. The Apple Pay innovation emerged from the data breaches and security failures, cyber attacks that happened in 2013 and 2014, where Target, Home Depot, and big payment processors like Global Payments, they had undergone cyber attacks, which led to the emergence of Apple Pay. The information technology behind Apple Pay can be broken down into two sides. We have the hardware and the software side. The hardware of Apple Pay is very simple. Apple Pay can only be used on hardware that is supported by Apple. Therefore, only the iPhone, the Apple Watch, and Apple PC computers, the Mac, are compatible with the information technology of Apple Pay. Now, the software side of Apple Pay is broken down a little bit more detailed. There's two sides also of the software. You have the software that is used in Apple Pay when you're making online or mobile payments, and you also have the software of Apple Pay when you have in-store payments. Now, when you're using Apple Pay to make a payment online, Apple takes the account information that you submit, it encrypts it, and sends it over to the issuer bank as a request for payment. Before that request goes through, you must authenticate your identity by either Face ID, Touch ID, or your passcode. Once authorization passes, then it gets sent over to the bank. The bank then authorizes the payment and sends the relevant information needed to complete the transaction over to the vendor. Now, if you're in person, Apple uses what's called near field communication to work with other near field communication devices within 5 inches. So, for example, one will bring their iPhone close enough to a terminal that accepts NFC. Now, that will initiate the transaction. What that's going to then do is the same thing that it would have done on an online payment. It's going to authenticate that the person requesting this is authorized to do that. Once again, you need to take Touch ID, Face ID, or a passcode to authorize it in person. Once it's authorized in person, Apple uses a technology called a secure element to make sure that the relevant information goes from your account to the party that needs to complete the transaction, aka the merchant or the vendor in store. It sounds complicated, but it only takes about 5 seconds in real time for this to play out. The competitive environment of Apple Pay specifically is very interesting. Apple as a company has very many competitors, but I'm going to specifically focus on Apple Pay's competitive environment, which there are two. You have the mobile payment industry, where you have competitors such as Samsung and Google Pay, who in response to Apple Pay, Samsung and Google, they released their own mobile payment service after Apple Pay. This was a direct competitive move by Apple's biggest competitors in this segment. In the payment processing companies that involve MasterCard, Visa, American Express, those are competitive to Apple Pay because they naturally take the space of the payment processing industry that Apple is trying to encompass itself in. The organizational implementation. Now, organization wise, Apple first introduced Apple Pay in 2014 via a press release. Steve Jobs at the time, he described it, or sorry, not Steve Jobs. Tim Cook at the time described it as a innovative way to change how we pay for things. And it was very useful that the software and the hardware from Apple were used to combine and make a competitive advantage. The critical success factor of Apple Pay is two things. You have the software that was previously described that's very unique to Apple Pay and innovative in its own way, as they were the first mover, the emergent of the mobile payment software. So they have that critical success, but also the environments that Apple Pay is surrounded by. So as previously noted, you had the data breaches and the security breaches in credit cards from Home Depot, Target, and Global Payment Services. The security threats have opened up the opportunity for Apple Pay to have a lot of success. But the other side of it is the environment that it's in as regards to the pandemic. We're in a worldwide pandemic right now, and that causes people to care for safety, and that's affecting how people are making online payments. The major risk to success for Apple Pay simply is that customers just don't use the service as much as other Apple devices or Apple softwares. Now, to mitigate that risk of consumers just simply brushing off Apple Pay, Apple has introduced an Apple Card. It's a physical credit card used in order to make purchases online or in person. Now, the reason it mitigates the risk of people not using it is that it offers an incentive, a monetary incentive. It offers up to 3% cash back on purchases, whether they're Apple Pay or 1% on all purchases. So this incentive mitigates any risk that Apple customers will not want to use this additional service. In conclusion, Apple Pay is an innovative technology built by Apple in response to security threats and to safety fears from a pandemic perspective. Apple Pay has the software and hardware compatibilities to become very successful. As previously stated, they use near field communication, they use secure elements and other softwares in order to authorize and make these transactions seamlessly fast. Apple Pay is in a competitive environment with other companies that are cell phone companies as well as credit card companies. Despite all of this, Apple has critical success factors and characteristics that it encompasses in that allow it to be successful. For example, Apple Pay is being used right now in a field where people want to make safer transactions. Therefore, contactless payment is on the rise, and Apple Pay is built for success. I look forward to any questions or comments on this business opportunity.